Welcome to What's a Beautiful Life Anyway? I'm your host, Jill Bennett. This is the channel that shares ideas to help you live your best life, because life can be beautiful if you live consciously. Welcome to episode 1. I'm so thrilled to have started this podcast. We're going to be talking about so many amazing things. And today I've got the most amazing guest. It's my lovely friend, Susan Marr. Susan is a prosperity and mindset coach. She's been mentored by the amazing, legendary Bob Proctor, and she helps entrepreneurs live into their greatest life by helping multiply their effectiveness and their income. Welcome, Susan.
Hi, Jill. Sorry, to start off with a hoarse throat. Hi, Jill. How are you?
Yeah, no, I'm great. Thank you. I'm great. And I finally got this going. So, yeah, I'm just delighted to have you on here. Now, Susan, we know that most people live from the outside in. They use their senses to monitor what's going on and react accordingly. And I think it was John Assaraf who said that there is an equation in life, and it's the event plus your reaction to it determines the outcome. And that's so true, isn't it? You know, how one person reacts to something is completely different to how someone else reacts to it. So I know you've got a favorite quote, which you can tell us if you want, or we can just start discussing this whole thing about the way people live and the way it's sort of back to front.
Right. Well, Jill, first of all, thank you so much for having me on your episode 1. I'm thrilled to be here. And I love everything that you are doing here about helping people living beautifully. And as you said, you know, you're talking about people who live from the outside in. And I think a lot of us heard this phrase of living from the inside out. And I think we all have our own interpretation of what that actually means, but do we actually do it? Do we actually do it? Because I think that the cause of a beautiful life, whatever that means for somebody, starts with our innermost thoughts. It starts from within, and it's about how you look at things, how you choose to respond to things, and you actually have the ability to choose what you think, believe it or not. So what we're talking about here is really how the average person corresponds their way through life by living through our 5 senses. And that makes absolute sense: see, hear, smell, taste, and touch. But the truth here is, the thing that most people don't know about is that we have 6 higher intellectual mental faculties available to us. And those high intellectual faculties are all about how we actually live from within first. Right, Jill?
Absolutely.
So you know about
right.
this.
And it's not just the living thing. There's so much written about this. Shawn Achor has an amazing TED talk about happiness. And his book called The Happiness Advantage, he talks about, most people think, oh, when I get that promotion, when I meet the love of my life, when I have a baby, when I get divorced or whatever, I'll be happy. But actually, you've got to be happy first. It's going back to this whole thing about using these higher faculties, these mental faculties, and getting happy from within is what's going to help you along your way. So Susan, tell us what these 6 mental faculties are.
Well, before I get onto that, because I know people are itching to hear what are the 6 faculties. It's what you just said there is perfectly correct, because it's like, well, we've got to feel the happiness first, but how do we do that? And you know, if something is, you know, if the house is burning around us and things are not working out, or you don't like what's in your bank balance, how do you induce that feeling of happiness when you're like reacting to what you're seeing? And I want to point out that the events that are created and manifested in our life, experiences that we have, are actually a historical document of past thinking.
Yes.
We create what we think. Thoughts becomes things. and the manifestation of your life, where you live, your income, and everything about the quality of your life and relationships have manifested already, because thought precedes it first. You create it in your mind first. So how do we create things in our mind? Well, we do go with, and then I'll talk about the 6 mental faculties right now. So they are your perception, your will, your reason, imagination, intuition, and memory. Okay, so instead of working from our 5 senses and looking at what's happening around us, we're not liking what's happening around us. So how do we go sort of like tune that out, which seems completely contrary to how we've been taught to live life, right? So we have to work on our intellectual mental faculties, and they are like mental muscles. Yeah.
Can we just give an example of how this works in reality? And I know you're right, and I know it's worked for me, focusing on something I don't want to focus on. But if I can just give an example. So I have someone in my life, I'm not going to say whether it's a relative or a friend, and all their life they have said, I'm broke, I'm broke, I'm broke. And they kept saying to me, you always attract money into your life. You always attract money into your life. And my answer to her was, because I think I deserve it, and because I think constantly about living an abundant life and deserving it. All you think about is being broke. And that's the constant thought and the constant repetition coming out of you. When you go shopping, you say you can't afford something. You know, you have to change the way you think. I'm hoping that by sort of relaying that story, that people out there will suddenly think, oh, that's what they mean. That's what they mean by.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, it's important to take what I'm saying and then make it relatable. It's like, what does this mean in our daily lives? I mean, what are these 6 mental faculties? And, you know, that's a whole lesson in itself. But absolutely, if people are saying, I am you are going to manifest that. The narrative, that the internal dialogue that we have, that is on repeat, and sometimes we're not even aware of it. So the first step is awareness. What are you saying to yourself over and over again? You know, when you go shopping, do you decide, well, I'll get the cheaper option of the two? So if you're constantly saying I can't afford it, you are literally creating that, because thoughts become things. So how do we start changing that? And the first thing is becoming aware of our thoughts. Awareness is the first step. You got to know what are you saying. Take note. I mean, and the thing is, we have 70,000 thoughts a day, right? So how are we going to keep track of that? And the easiest way is actually checking on your feelings. Yeah. Okay, so we live in the quality of our emotions, truthfully, right? Because, you know, living beautifully. Okay, what does that really mean? It's about how we feel day to day, moment to moment, and over the long term. So if you're constantly saying, hey, look, I can't afford this, you're living in a lack mindset for the majority of the time. And so how does that make you feel? And is there a worthiness aspect here going on? So there's so many different layers that we could approach and look at this. But essentially, you can monitor your thoughts by just checking in. How do I feel in this moment? Do I feel good? Do I feel depressed? Where are you? And so the first step is awareness. Then the second step is like, well, how do I change this around? So we have choice of thought. Okay, so you may say, well, I can't afford it, and that you may feel like, well, that's my truth. But that's exactly my point. If you keep living that into it every day, you start creating that. So you've got to tell yourself something that you do want to believe until it becomes a fact.
Yes.
Yes.
And that's not as hard. That's not as hard as you would think, because I'm sure everyone can think of something in their life that's made them feel amazing at some stage, whether it's going back to childhood, whether it's being in love, having a child, whatever it is, think of something that made you feel really good and remember how that felt. And then whenever you're having doubts in your life, just try and tune into that feeling of really feeling good. It doesn't matter that whatever it is as past. It's just tuning into that good feeling, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm going to refer to my mentor, Bob, because when you're talking about feelings, we're actually talking about, he often talks about how we live in an ocean of motion, that we are living in frequencies, because everything around us is energy, and energy is a frequency, and a frequency has a level of vibration. Vibration is a different way of saying how we're feeling. So low mood, low vibration, happy, positive vibration. So how do we always keep moving into the positive vibration? And really, I'm talking about, well, if we have something that is happening in our life and it is not the way we would want it, the ordinary reaction would be to resist it, to not want it, and we may talk about it to our friends, and so that we can relive that story over again and manifest more of those emotions. But how do we use our 6 high mental faculties to start like changing the narrative? And I think one of the most important ones here is perception, because you can always look at a situation from different angles. So I'm going to use an example. Like if I'm in my home and there's a car crash outside, it's got nothing to do with me, but there's a car crash outside. Now, the person walking down the street who witnessed it was quite close to it, maybe a little bit shook up, and but it's still the car crash. And then it's going to be a different experience from the person who was inside it. And it's like, well, the thing is, the situation is this. It's not a positive. We make something positive or negative. We get to choose, and there is always good in everything. Okay, so what's so great about a car crash? Usually when you have those car crash moments in your life, it's your wake-up call. Yes. And then you start living your life differently. But there is always good in something, because by law, you have an in and out and an up and a down. So you have a good and a bad. There's always going to be a good in a negative situation. So one of the tools I would use is always like, well, this experience has happened. What could be the reason that I give that would be more meaningful to me in a positive sense? That's a really good question to ask. Earlier on, you asked me about a quote that I liked, and this is I think it's really comes into its own here. It's from Neil Donald Walsh's book of Happier Than God, and there's three points I say as a mantra over and over again. Number 1, nothing in this world is real. I'll explain that in a moment. Number 2, the meaning of everything is the meaning I give it. That's truth. And number 3, I am who I say I am, and my experience is what I say it is. So what are we saying here is that so nothing in the world is real is actually quite deep. But if I break it down in the simplest sense, we're all made of atoms and molecules. This table in front of me is solid, right? It appears solid. You look at me, I'm a solid being, but if you break everything down into atoms and molecules, you'll know that what are atoms and molecules? It's mostly space. Yeah. So what is our reality? So I just want to bring a different perspective on that. But that's a whole very deep subject on its own. But the points 2 and 3 are what really speaks to me here, is that the meaning of everything is the meaning I give it. And that's perception right there. It's also choice. Reason is one of the other 6 high mental faculties. We get to choose our thoughts. Even when you go, well, no, I want to feel, I feel bad about this. And it's like, well, why do we want to keep feeling bad about something when you have a choice to change the way you feel? And you go, no, this was so awful. I feel bad about it. But the truth, and you can look up in any text, that we do have choice. And that's because it's one of our higher mental faculties. And so I want to draw that to people's attention. Look at a situation and look for the good in something, and then choose what is the thought that I want to take away that's going to help me feel great, because we live in the quality of our emotions.
Yes, yeah. And it's so fundamental to living a good life. There's many books, and I met and interviewed a woman once who'd written one where she had breast cancer and she refused all medical treatment. Now, I would never say to anyone you should refuse medical treatment. Let's just put that out there. But she decided to, and she did it holistically. And a year later, she was cancer-free. And as I say, she's written a book about it. And I interviewed her, but it was all to do with her mindset. When she told the consultant she was refusing all medical treatment, he told her she was going to die. And I think, A, that's very wrong of a consultant to say, but B, it is what you believe and what you take in and what you allow to go inside of you. You're the one who has control of your thoughts. You're the one who needs to think carefully and decide what's going to go in and what's not going to go in.
Yeah, William James said, believe, and your belief will create the fact. And it's so often that we can defer to a person of authority or an expert in their field and believe what they have to say. But there is no greater belief than the one that you create or choose for yourself. And if you want to choose health, just say, I'm happy, healthy, and wealthy. It's a great mantra.
Yeah, no, it's a brilliant mantra. Now, Susan, we're sort of running out of time,
Sure.
but I would love you to leave some tips for people on how they can just start this process. We've said to tune into your emotions, but what else could they do as an absolute starting point?
Okay, well, I think, when you think about going from living from within, the first thing is, as a tool, meditation is incredible. It's basically about just stilling those racing thoughts. And when you can find peace and ease in that space, it can be as short as 5 minutes. It doesn't have to be a crazy 1-hour meditation. Just find space for yourself. Take time and still your mind, because in the words of Thomas Troward, the purity of mind is so important, because it inevitably leads to purity of life. And that's, if you can do that consistently, just do that as a streak, that is number one, will improve the quality of your life without a doubt. Number two is really look into this 6 high mental faculties that we've just glossed over, because when you learn to master those, they're mental muscles. They are mental muscles. So if people say, I don't have a good memory, it's not that we don't have a good memory. We just have weak memories, like weak muscles. Just got to exercise it. Yeah, and so there are ways to be able to build those mental muscles, and so that they override the 5 senses that we look at with the world. If we can go from within, and that's where I would start. Study who you truly are, and you will find so much freedom in knowing that you have the ability to create whatever you want in your life, the most beautiful life, and just by working with these mental muscles. So I have an event, if I can say, Jill.
Yes, please. Yes, that would be brilliant.
It's a training event on the 26th, 27th, and 28th of April. It's in my Facebook group called Prosperity Go-Getters, and there's going to be a link as well. You're going to post
in the show notes. Yeah,
fantastic. And so I will be doing a 3-day masterclass right in here about helping you live a more beautiful life by managing your emotions and really to create and manifest whatever you want just by thought alone, which sounds crazy, but that's kind of what I teach, and that's how I help people live and to lives to live into their passions.
And it's true. It is absolutely true that people can think into what they want from life. Sorry, I was just turning the timer off because I didn't want it to ring, but there we are. This is live, so it's not perfect yet. But yeah, people can think into their lives. People can, and I know that sounds very woo-woo, and some people may find that really hard to believe, but look around you. Look at the people who are successful in your life. Look at the way they behave. Look at the things that they say and the thoughts that they have. I for some reason, have always been a half glass full type person. And my sister was the opposite. And after I discovered all the stuff that Susan brilliantly teaches, and I explained it to my sister turned around to me and said, that's why you've lived the life you have, and I've lived the life I have. And my sister has since turned her life around. So please, everybody, look in the show notes, see the links to Susan's masterclass and sign up. It's a free masterclass. You will learn so much. and it will really, really help you to move forward and start to live your most beautiful life. Susan, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's all my joy. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you.